Hello friends, I'm Kamakshi Khandelwal. I'm a chartered accountant by profession, having more than 8 years of experience in indirect taxation. Today I'm going to share my wonderful experience of uploading GSTR 1, 2 and 3 on the GSTN portal. First, I would like to start with GSTR 1. There are two ways through which GSTR 1 can be uploaded. First is the online mode and second is the offline mode. I will demonstrate each of the modes one by one. First, let's start with the online mode. Businesses that generally have small number of supplies can opt to upload their invoice details and file their GSTR 1 via the online mode. For this, the user needs to log into the GST portal, that is www.gst.gov.in. The GST homepage is displayed. Next, the user needs to log into the GST portal with the valid credentials. The dashboard is displayed. Now, click on the Services tab. Thereafter, click on the Return tab. The following screen opens up. As you can see, there are three options. First, Return Dashboard. Second, View e-file return. Third, Track return status. By clicking on the Return Dashboard tab, the user can upload the details of various statements or returns required to be filed in GST like GSTR 1, GSTR 2, etc. In the View e-file returns tab, the user can view various e-returns filed during any particular period. In Track return status, the user can track the status of their statements or returns filed for any particular tax period. Now, we will click on the Return Dashboard tab to start the process of filing GSTR 1. As soon as you click on the Return Dashboard tab, this window opens up. The user has to select the financial year and the period for which return is required to be filed from the drop-down menu. In my example, I have selected the return filing period as April. Thereafter, click on the Search button. When you click on the Search button, next window that opens up, this window displays the various statements or returns that are required to be filed in GST along with their respective due date. First is the outward supplies made by the taxpayer, GSTR 1, and its due date is 10th of May 2017. Second, inward supplies received by the taxpayer. Form GSTR 2, its due date is 15th of May 2017. Next, monthly return. Form GSTR 3, its due date is 20th May 2017. Next, annual return. Form is GSTR 9. Its due date is 31st of December 2018. Next is creation and submission of addendum to GSTR 1. Form is GSTR 1A. In this, you can make any amendments to the GSTR 1 filed by a taxpayer earlier. Next is creation and submission of periodic TCS return. The form is GSTR 8 and its due date is 10th of May 2017. Next is GSTR 6, return for input service distributor. Its due date is 15th of May 2017. Next is the auto drafted details, GSTR 2A. In this, the outward supplies filed by your supplier will be auto-populated. Next is return for non-resident taxable person, GSTR 5. Its due date is 15th of May 2016. Now, let us start with filing of details of outward supplies made by a taxpayer, that is GSTR 1. Click on the Prepare Online tab. Now, the following window opens up. This screen shows the GSTN number of the supplier, business name, financial year, return period, status as not filed, and its due date. Next column is the gross turnover of the taxpayer in the previous financial year. In this, a user needs to enter the gross turnover of its company or firm in the previous financial year. This information is required to be given only once, that is, at the time of filing the first return. Thereafter, this figure will be picked up automatically. Click on the Save button after entering the turnover details. Now coming down, this section shows the summary of various tables. A user needs to upload the invoice details for the following categories as applicable to it. First, B2B invoices. In this section, you can add the details for supplies made to registered persons. Second, B2C large invoices. This section helps you to add the invoices of taxable outward interstate supplies and where invoice value is more than 2,50,000 issued against advance received in the earlier period. Next, credit or debit notes. This section shows you to add the details of credit or debit notes issued. Export invoice. This section helps you to add the export invoice details. Amended B2B invoice. This section helps you to do amendments to the details of outward supplies to registered person of earlier tax period. Amended B2C large invoice. This section helps you to amend the invoices of taxable outward interstate supplies and where invoice value is more than 2,50,000. Next, amended credit or debit notes. This section helps you to amend the details of credit or debit notes issued. Amended export invoices. This section helps you to amend the export invoice details. B2C others. This section helps you to add the details of taxable outward supplies made to unregistered persons intrastate and interstate where the invoice value is more than 2,50,000 rupees. Next is the nil rated supplies. This section helps you to add the details related to nil rated, exempted and non-taxable outward supplies. Next, tax liability advance payment. This section helps you to add the details of tax liability arising on account of time of supply without issuance of invoice in the same period. Amended B2C others. This section helps you to amend the details of taxable outward supplies made to unregistered persons and where invoice value is less than 2,50,000. Let us start filling in the details one by one. First, click on B2B invoices. Then, click on Add Invoice command. The following window opens up. The user needs to enter the GSTIN number of the receiver to whom the supplies are being made. As soon as you enter the GSTIN number of the receiver name and place of supply pops up automatically. Then the user needs to enter the invoice number and invoice date on which the supplies have been made. In my example, I have fed the invoice number as B2B001 and invoice date as 20th April 2017. I have kept the place of supply unchanged as Andhra Pradesh only. If the place of supply is different from the state where the receiver is registered, then the user can change the place of supply accordingly. Basis of the place of supply, the supply type is automatically freezed by the portal. Since the receiver is located in the state of Andhra Pradesh and me being the supplier is located in the state of Delhi, the transaction will classify as interstate transaction and IGST shall be levied. Now, enter the total invoice value of the supply, that is, the combined invoice value of goods as well as services, excluding any discounts, etc. If the supply is being made via any e-commerce operator like Amazon, Flipkart, then the user has to enter the GSTIN number of the e-commerce operator. Now scroll down. If the supply attract reverse charge, then the user needs to click on this box. In my example, I am assuming that my supply attracts reverse charge and the tax liability will be discharged by the service recipient. This also implies that the tax liability pertaining to this invoice would not be reflected in my electronic liability register. The same would be reflected in the electronic liability register of the recipient. That is 3F Industries in my example. Next, if the tax on this invoice is paid under provisional assessment, then the user needs to click on this icon. Now, the next is the user needs to enter the item details pertaining to an invoice number as stated above. In the category section, the user needs to select the category as goods or service from the drop-down menu. Let us assume that I am supplying printer in my example. Therefore, I have selected goods as my category. Now, the user needs to enter the HSN code of the goods. As you can see here that there is no red asterisk mark on the HSN code. This means that this field is not mandatory to be filled in. So, I have not filled the HSN code of the commodity supplied. Enter the taxable value, rate of IGST applicable. In my example, I have filled the taxable value as 4,50,000 and the rate of IGST as 5%. As soon as you fill up the rate of IGST, the tax amount is calculated automatically by the portal. If any cess is applicable on the goods supplied by the supplier, then the cess rate and the cess amount is also required to be filled. After filling in the required details, the user can click on the Save button to complete the transaction or click on the Add button to add further details of goods or services supplied against a particular invoice number. In my example, I have clicked on Add button to add further details. Now, when I click on the Add button, the following screen opens up. Again, I will select the category as goods or service. In my example, I am also charging for packing and delivering the goods to the recipient. So, I have selected the category as services this time. The user needs to enter the SSE code of the service being supplied. I have entered the SSE code as 00441480. The user has to enter the taxable value of the service provided and the applicable IGST tax rate. In my example, I have taken the taxable value as 6,000 and rate of tax as 18%. A user can enter multiple line items against a single invoice number. After the user has finished entering the item details, click on the Save button to save the details of the invoice. Next window that opens up is B2B Invoice Summary. It says Request accepted successfully. In case the user wants to edit the details entered in the invoice, then the user can click on the Edit button as shown in this image. The user may also delete the invoice if it does not want to upload any particular invoice by clicking on this button. Now, I have added another B2B invoice detail in my example by clicking on Add Invoice button, the details of which are as shown in the screen. I have entered the GSTR number of a company located in Delhi. The receiver name and place of supply pops up automatically. Since my location being the supplier and the place of supply of the recipient is in the same state, therefore this transaction is an interstate transaction and CGST and SGST would be levied. Now I have entered the details of goods supplied to the recipient. I have entered the taxable value as 20 lakh. Since this transaction being an intra-state transaction, the portal has automatically displayed the type of tax as CGST and SGST. I have assumed the rate of tax as 5%. Therefore, the tax is split into 2.5% CGST and 2.5% SGST. As soon as I enter the rate of tax, the amount of tax is calculated automatically. Thereafter, I click on Add button to add another item detail. This is shown in the following screen. I have again selected the category as goods, entered the taxable value and rate. This time I have selected tax rate as 12% in my example. So the tax rate is split into 6% CGST and 6% SGST. As soon as I enter the tax rate, the amount of tax is calculated automatically. Now I will click on the Save button to save the transaction. Now I come back to the main screen. As you can see, the number of B2B invoices entered is 2 is reflected here. Now I will add details relating to export supplies made by me by clicking on the Export Invoices. Now the following window opens up. The user needs to enter the invoice number, invoice date, shipping bill number, shipping bill date, port code. In my example, I have entered the invoice number as B2E002, invoice date as 4th April 2017. Since shipping bill number and shipping bill date are not mandatory, therefore I haven't entered the details relating to the same. I have written the port code as USA. The user is not allowed to change the supply type in the case of export transactions. Export transactions are always treated as interstate transactions by virtue of Section 7, Subsection 5, Clause A of IGST Act 2017. Now you are required to enter the total invoice value and GST payment. I have entered the total invoice value as 1,43,750. Now when you move the cursor to GST payment, two options are available, WPay and WOPay. WPay means exporting the goods or service with payment of tax and claiming the refund of tax later. WOPay means exporting the goods or service without charging tax upon execution of bond. I have selected the GST payment as WPay in my example. Now when you scroll down, the user needs to enter the item details. In this case, you have to enter the details in the same manner as demonstrated in the case of B2B. Let us assume I am exporting a printer. Therefore, I have to select the category as goods. Since HSN code is mandatory to be filled in the case of export transactions, I have entered the HSN code as 970111010. I have entered the taxable value as 1,37,750 and the rate of IGST as 12%. As soon as the rate of tax is punched, the amount of tax is calculated automatically. Now, click on the Add button to add details of another line item. Continuing with my example of export of printer, I have also charged freight from the customer. Therefore, I have selected the category as services and entered the SAC code as 00441480. In respect of the same, I have entered the taxable value as 6,000 towards the amount of freight and rate of tax as 18%. Now, the tax amount of 1080 is populated automatically. After adding the complete details, I will click on the Save button. The following window appears. There are two invoice details appearing in the screen. One invoice is WPay and another is WOPay. The details for WOPay transactions are to be filled in the same way as WPay. The only difference would be in the GST payment type. In this, I have selected WOPay as the payment method. Therefore, the column related to tax fields are freezed in such a scenario. Then, I am coming back to the main screen. Now, the total number of export invoices appear in the screen as 2. Now, I will enter the details relating to B2C invoice others. B2C invoice other means supplies made to unregistered customers having transaction value less than 2,50,000 against a single invoice. When I click on the B2C, the following window opens up. There are two types of transactions possible for B2C others. First is e-com. Second is non-e-com. In e-com, a user has to fill the details of those supplies which are made through e-commerce portals, and in non-e-com, a user has to upload normal B2C supplies. In my example, I have selected non-e-com. In B2C details, there is no need to give the details invoice-wise. A supplier has to give consolidated supplies made by it in a particular month for a single HSN or SAC code to multiple recipients belonging to a single state. Meaning thereby, if me, being a supplier in Delhi, have supplied, for example, pen having HSN code as 9113100 to multiple recipients in Haryana, state code 06, against different invoices, then I can club all those transactions into one and enter a consolidated invoice value and the tax rate applicable to the supply of pen. which is 18% in my example. Likewise, a supplier can enter multiple entries HSN or SAC code wise and recipient state wise. Now, when a user has filled in all the details relating to B2B, B2C, exports, the GSTR 1 screen looks like this. Total number of B2B invoices 2. Its total invoice value as 25,50,000. Total taxable value as 25,05,000 and total tax liability as 1,29,400. Total number of export invoices 2. Its total invoice value as 1,48,250. Total taxable value as 1,47,800 and the total tax liability as 17,610. Total number of B2C invoice 1. Total taxable value 10,000 and total tax liability as 1,800. Now before filing the GSTR 1, the user has to click on the declaration tab which states I or we hereby solemnly affirm and declare that the information given herein above is true and correct to the best of my or our knowledge and belief and has nothing been concealed therefrom. Thereafter, the user has to click on the Submit tab. Now, the screen appears as follows. You have to select the name of the authorized signatory of your company or firm who is authorized to file the GSTR 1. Now, you can see there are two options through which GSTR 1 can be uploaded. First is file GSTR 1 with DSC. Second, file GSTR 1 with EVC. In the first option, the user has to file GSTR 1 using the Digital Signature Certificate DSC of the authorized signatory. In file GSTR 1 with EVC, in case the user does not want to use the digital signature certificate, he has another option to file GSTR 1 with EVC. That is by entering the OTP, one-time password, sent to the mobile number of the authorized signatory whose name was mentioned above. So, when user clicks on File GSTR 1 with EVC, the following window opens up. In this, the user is required to enter the OTP sent on the mobile number to file the return and click on Verify. After entering the OTP and clicking on the Verify button, the following window opens up. It says, your form has been successfully filed with ARN number AA0704170000112Y. This means our GSTR 1 has been uploaded. Now, if the user wants to see the status of GSTR 1 filed, then the user needs to click on the services menu on the home page of the GSTN portal, then click on the return tab and then click on the return track return status command. The following window opens up. It shows the following particulars: the ARN number, return type as GSTR 1, financial year as 2017-2018, tax period as April, date of filing 14th May 2017, status as filed valid, and mode of filing as online. Now we have learned how to upload GSTR 1 online. I hope you all find it simple and useful.